Wright Hamilton, and welcome to Ignite. Are you ready to spark your passion and fuel your leadership journey? This is where ambition meets action and transformation begins. So let's light the fire and keep it burning. Today's show, we have Rochelle Forest Hankins to light our fire, and you are in for a great show. She is all about holistic health, and she has a company, Create Health Naturally. Welcome, Rochelle.
Hi, so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's a
Oh,
conversation we all need to be having.
well, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I wanted you to share with my audience a little bit about, from a leadership perspective, how you got into this natural health healing and helping others with their health.
Well, it began honestly when you're a little girl at 4. All of us have a different story. And basically, what I didn't know was I was so busy serving other people that I was actually depleting my light. And I went into nursing thinking that I could help others, again, more of a codependent move. But the truth is, it's like I needed to start with my own vehicle. My spiritual life had always been strong. I'd been a little praying girl that just knew that God heard me. My emotional life was just overwhelmed all the time. My dad was an alcoholic, and my mom and dad had that connection that could have been the worst because I had a mom that was very fearful and a dad that didn't take responsibility. But through that experience, it caused me to be stronger. And so in nursing school, I started really figuring out I put in my body, the food that I was eating. If I was dehydrated, it's almost like I was living this life experience because I wasn't raised in a holistic environment. So I started learning more about whole food and what that did for my body. And what I found and figured out was in order to really feel on my game every day I needed to start with quiet time because otherwise I got into the chaos and everything was always moving around me. It wasn't until I learned to sit still I was able to hear. And so then I started putting a plan together. So through that quiet space, and I recommend everyone to figure out if it's 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, it's 10 minutes, guys. It's not hours. In order to shift your body and your energy, it just takes a snap. So that was from a physical, from a food side. I realized I needed endurance because I was working full time as a nursing student while I was going to school. So for that endurance, that sleep became significant because the anxiety sometimes keeps us up. And what I realized is we all create those patterns and we have to stop and look at our life, figure out what are you eating? What are you thinking? Because some of those fearful thoughts weren't even mine. They were imprinted on my mind by my mom, and she was my hero. I looked up to her for everything. But what I realized I had to transform and reframe some of those thoughts to get the power back. So through that journey of school, I actually learned how to live more holistically. And since that moment, it's become a journey. And I'm now 63 and have certainly had some highs and some lows. But I have learned that in those lows, it means I'm not listening to something. Is my body off? Is my mind off? Is my spiritual platform of my foundation? Is it strong? And then I start to look at each piece to see where I need to reframe.
That's a great perspective when you start talking about leadership and you're talking about what you're doing and how you're making it happen. As you're thinking about that, and it makes me think about how we talk about wellness.
Mhm,
We talk about self care and
mhm.
taking care of yourself, because how can you be a good leader, a good person, a good teammate, work with anybody else if you don't have that self care in terms of moving forward? We talk about that all the time. So I'd love for you to share a story
Hmm.
of when you have, as you were leading through working and all of that, where you recognize, wait a minute, I need to stop and pause and I need to rethink
Hmm.
because my pieces are not aligned. And
Hmm.
what gave you that warning?
I was probably about 29, and I was very blessed to have an opportunity to do a huge name change for a hospital. But
Hmm.
because I felt so humbled and honored to do that at a young age, because I just felt like, you know, I almost felt like I was faking it till I make was making it. But the truth is, I'm a very creative person. I love teams. But what I did was I got on this track, and I had two little boys at the time, and I was running all the time and doing this, doing this, doing this, doing this, doing this. And all of a sudden, one morning I got up and I felt like I didn't know me anymore. And so
Hmm.
what I had to do was I had to look at that last 4 months, and I had done some amazing work, but at the price of my life. And also, what I was doing is I had a lovely team, and guess how they were acting? Work, 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 and they wanted me, and I'm a positive affirmation. I give you lots of feedback,
Hmm.
and that's we thrive on that as as Americans, I'll even say, because not other cultures do it. But
Hmm.
what I had to realize is I was leading a transformation, but it wasn't just of a hospital name, it was of a team. Because in
Hmm.
order to go from this small community hospital to a Midwest medical center, I had to lead good habits. So we stepped back and we started taking the big goal. But what were some baby steps that we could take? So every morning, just 10 minutes, we did a check in. How are you feeling? Do you feel like you're being supported? What is it that you need? How may I be of assistance to you? Because what I always do is I hire people that are much like me, probably, that are very independent, very driven, and it's okay. I don't need that oversight. But the truth
Hmm.
is, some of our jobs as leaders
Hmm.
is to pay attention to how our team is showing up. Because when
Hmm.
you have a good fellowship, you have huge responsibility on how we're supposed to support our team. And by leading by example and having clear set goals, we were
Hmm.
able to shift it. And it was a whole year project. So the good
Wow.
news is I recognized it in 3 to 4 months. And we were a little burned out already. And it wasn't a sprint, it was a marathon. So
Hmm.
we had to do check-ins every day to say how we're feeling. And some days, like we always joke about sick days, but for
Yeah.
me, I didn't have sick days, but sometimes you need a mental health day. So as a leader or a boss, we need to pay attention to say, maybe you just need an afternoon to go play with your kids. And
Hmm.
we have that responsibility and the authority to be able to
Hmm.
make those decisions.
Hmm.
Another thing I think is when you're planning big goals,
Yeah.
if you want to sit back and just allow things to happen, it doesn't take a lot of energy. But
Hmm.
if we're igniting our light and we are
Hmm.
changing the world, it takes energy.
Yes.
So we have to decide when we talk about self care, each of us are moved by different types of self care.
Hmm.
Mine is nature. I like
Hmm.
to get out because I listen and I engage in all my senses. And as a leader, I'm helping my teams to really tap into their intuition too. And
Hmm.
some of us, and women specifically, I think, are more naturally geared that way.
Hmm.
But when you want to see greatness in your team and in leadership, you
Hmm.
help people to tap into those senses, be present, be now, and listen to that small voice because it's there, and then trust it. But we have to trust our teams, but we have to set the framework because sometimes people have never had the discipline to really stay the course in being very quiet, being fed, having the rest. It's all different cycles. But I have found in leadership is sometimes we have a sprint, but once we have a sprint, we need a little break.
Mhm.
If it's a long way, we have to encourage steps of stopping daily. And when I work at home now, we have the privilege of doing a lot of things from home now. Sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. But I really am grateful for my iWatch because it reminds me that I need to get up and walk around. I remind my staff that we're a team, but we're
Mhm.
nothing if we're burned out. And I hear so much about burnout now, but I think
Mhm.
the COVID took a whole chunk out of our whether it was the vaccine or the disease or the loss of
Mhm.
those 2.5 years. We're regaining that strength again, but
Mhm.
it's really important as leaders to acknowledge the immune system took a beating. And even if you went out, it wasn't like you didn't get exposed to the virus. You did, but your immune system was strong enough to ward it off.
Right.
But
And I think that's what you're bringing up now is a very important concept because we have to think about our environment and the length of time that we were dealing with the environment and those implications on us as a being, right?
mhm, mhm.
Because there was a lot of emotional challenges, a lot of mental challenges where people are like, "Oh my God, I got to get out of my house." We're going to take a station break and we're going to continue when we come back.